Hello, my name is Rob, and today I'll be giving you a presentation on hypertension, commonly known as high blood pressure. The following presentation will cover these key topics to provide a further understanding on the generalities of hypertension or high blood pressure. To begin, what is high blood pressure? And for us to understand that, we need to know what blood pressure is. Blood pressure is the pressure of blood pushing against the walls of your arteries. Your arteries carry blood from your heart to other parts of your body. Your blood pressure normally rises and falls throughout the day depending on your activities. Hypertension is blood pressure that is higher than normal. Having blood pressure measuring consistently above normal may result in diagnosis of hypertension. The higher your blood pressure levels, the more risk you are of having certain health problems such as heart disease, heart attacks, and strokes. The history of high blood pressure can be seen all the way back to 2600 BE when the Chinese physicians identified what they referred to as heart pulse. Treatment of heart pulse disease during ancient times included acupuncture, venesection, and bleeding by leeches. In 1150 BE, ancient Egyptian physicians identified a relationship between palpitative pulse and the development of heart and brain afflictions. In 1733, an English clergyman invented a manometer and made the first published measurements of arterial blood pressure in the horse. The technological advancement introduced many new studies to occur in regards to the heart, blood pressure, and other pertinent factors during that time. In 1896, an Italian physician invented the first cuff-based mercury sphygmomanometer. The recognition of this invention transformed the entity of hypertension. He measured the peak systolic blood pressure, or SPB, by noting the cuff pressure at which the radial pulse was no longer palpable. Between 1910 and 1914, physicians made headway in defining both essential hypertension and malignant hypertension, associated with target organ damage and high mortality from strokes, heart failure, and/or kidney failure. It wasn't until President Franklin D. Roosevelt in 1945 that the impacts of untreated hypertension gained public attention. Hypertension management became more widely practiced in the 1950s after such publicity. Studies on hypertension continue in today's time, identifying further diagnosis, prognosis, and treatment for awareness and minimizing its prevalence. Hypertension is still the most prevalent of all non-communicable chronic diseases, or NCCD, throughout the world, including less developed countries. My personal interest in high blood pressure has to do with my family and its genetics. High blood pressure has been an existing condition that has haunted many generations of my family. My family has experienced many of the greater health problems that high blood pressure may cause, such as strokes and heart attacks. Learning more about high blood pressure will enable key understanding on how these underlying conditions can be controlled to prevent the further suffering and loss of my family members. The following statistics of hypertension are based on a very large and detailed systematic review study that examined global disparities of hypertension prevalence, awareness, treatment, and control in 2010. The results of this study found that 31.1% of the world's adults had hypertension. This equates to about 1.39 billion adults. The overall awareness of hypertension was approximately 52%. The average of those receiving treatment for hypertension was 42%, and those who had control of their hypertension was ranging at about 18%. The following depicted heat map provides a visual perspective of hypertension prevalence worldwide. This study further broke down the percentages into illustrated categories in the bar graph illustrated. Overall, the conclusion from systematic review studies states that global hypertension disparities are large and increasing. Collaborative efforts are urgently needed to combat the emerging hypertension burden. Many blood pressure medications known as antihypertensives are available by prescription to lower hypertension. There are a variety of classes of hypertension medications, and they include a number of different drugs. The following is a quick list of 11 of those different classes of hypertensive medications. The most common class type used are diuretics. Diuretics help the body get rid of excess sodium in water that supports and control high blood pressure. Moving on, the two most known and best alternatives in medicine for controlling hypertension is aerobic exercise and a healthy diet. Aerobic exercises include but aren't limited to jogging, dancing, biking, swimming, walking, rowing, stair climbing, and so on. For a healthy diet, The limiting use of salt or sodium in your foods and increasing potassium intake can assist in maintaining blood pressure. In 2014, the American Journal of Preventive Medicine published an article in relation to the economic cost of hypertension within the United States. Before I get into the actual numbers, I have to make a consideration where hypertension is the main contributor to cardiovascular disease, or CVD. Knowing this, we can analyze the overall economic cost for both factors now. Hypertension is responsible for $51.2 billion per year in healthcare costs, while CVD is averaging about $316.1 billion per year. To get further in detail, the individual cost of hypertension is also very shocking. According to another systematic review study, individuals with hypertension are estimated to pay nearly $2,000 more on annual healthcare expenditures compared to their non-hypertensive peers. This trend has been relatively stable for over 12 years according to this year's study of collected data. Based on healthcare economic and individual costs, it is alarmingly proven that hypertension remains a major underlying condition that continues to require an aggressive approach on diagnosis, prognosis, and treatment efforts. There are many physiological factors affected by hypertension, but the main four are cardiac output, peripheral vascular resistance, RAS, and autonomic nervous system. Cardiac output, or CO, is the amount of blood pumped by the heart minute and is the mechanism whereby blood flows around the body, especially providing blood flow to the brain and other vital organs. In essence, it's the main water pump from a centralized reservoir. Hypertension basically strains the pump system to work harder. Peripheral resistance is the resistance of the artery's blood flow. As the arteries constrict, the resistance increases, and as they dilate, resistance decreases. In simple terms, it's like stepping on a water hose and the water pressure increases trying to escape when you step on it. And when you remove your foot, it becomes unrestricted again. Hypertension is the acting foot in this analogy. RAS is a hormone system within the body that is essential for the regulation of blood pressure and fluid balance. The RAS functions to elevate blood volume and arterial tone in a prolonged manner. It does this by increasing sodium reabsorption, water reabsorption, and vascular tone. Simply, the RAS acts as a water plant system that ensures water levels and the flow is correct, but salt is blocking proper gauge readings, making the water level and flow increase. The autonomic nerve system, or ANS, regulates a variety of blood processes that take place without conscious effort. The ANS is a part of the peripheral nervous system that is responsible for regulating involuntary body functions such as heartbeat, blood flow, breathing, and digestion. Simply put, the ANS is a supervisor that watches and manages the water from the water plant to the end user and back. Hypertension affects the ANS so it receives improper information, which leads to the miscalculations and mismanaging of the entire system. Hypertension has a long list of etiologies, but the main ones identified are obesity, high alcohol intake, high salt intake, sedentary lifestyle, and stress. Obesity is considered the main etiology factor for hypertension. The relationship between blood pressure and body fat is not restricted to the morbidity of obese, but is continuous throughout the entire range of body weight. Drinking too much alcohol can raise blood pressure to unhealthy levels. Making more than 3 drinks in one sitting temporarily raises your blood pressure, but repeated binge drinking can lead to long-term increases. A high salt diet disrupts the natural sodium balance in the body. This causes fluid retention, which leads to hypertension. Having a sedentary lifestyle is a major risk overall. People who are less active and less physically fit have a 30 to 50% greater chance of getting hypertension than their more active peers. And finally, stress. Your body produces a surge of hormones when you're in a stressful situation. These hormones temporarily increase your blood pressure by causing your heart to beat faster and your blood vessels to narrow. Diagnosing high blood pressure requires you to take blood pressure measurements with 2 numbers. The first number, which is the SPB, measures the pressure in your arteries when your heart beats. The second number, which is based on your DPB, measures the pressure in your arteries when your heart rests between beats. If the measurement reads 120 SPB and 80 DPB, you would say 120 over 80. The following chart here indicates the 5 levels of blood pressure ranging from normal to hypertensive crisis. Hypertension usually has no warning signs or symptoms, and many people do not know they have it until they get their blood pressure checked. Physicians utilize the previously stated etiologies as assessment tools coupled with blood pressure readings for prognosis and possible treatment plans. The three major treatments for hypertension is through prescribed medication, maintaining a healthy diet with low sodium intake, and being active by regularly conducting aerobic exercises. Prior to concluding this presentation, the following are just a few key highlights for remembering. Here are my references. Here are my references continued. This concludes my presentation on hypertension, commonly known as high blood pressure.